Look, killing stuff in games is fun. Simply pressing a button and watching an entire fleet of baddies evaporate is just fun. And yet, there are some games that like to sort of pretend that some things are non-lethal. No one really died, they're probably saying, somewhere in some fever dream. But we know the truth. We know just how deadly some attacks and abilities really are. Pokemon, self-destruct, hyper beam, and so on. Anyone who's played Pokemon, even the first generation, will be familiar with attacks like self-destruct. You know, the one where your Pokemon explodes to damage and or kill the enemy? I mean, it's pretty metal, but how in the world do Pokemon just faint? Even if there's some logical explanation, how do all of these cataclysmic beam attacks result in the Pokemon? Given how Gary's Raticate died, we're motivated to think that some of these attacks are killing Pokemon, even if that particular theory involves the Raticate not receiving medical attention in time. Batman, Arkham Knight, Batmobile takedowns. Oh, so you're driving through the city of Gotham with a bat, no guns man, at the helm of his Batmobile? How non-lethal could takedowns with this hulking beast of a machine possibly be, especially when many vehicles explode afterwards? Even if Batman isn't outright killing these crooks, much like the beatings he doles out, you have to believe they're horribly crippled or on the verge of death. Yakuza. Fists, pipes, knives, etc. The Yakuza series has always been about death in certain circumstances. That is to say, a storyline character is only dead when they're shown actually dying. However, for everything else, there's just unconsciousness. So when Kiryu is throwing bicycles around, smashing thugs' faces into walls, and tossing them out windows, they're apparently just unconscious. What if they're not, though? What if some of those faceless thugs just straight up died? How could they not, honestly? Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. Heroic brutalities. Mortal Kombat has always been weird about its fatalities because, well, everyone who's brutally murdered is usually seen in the sequel. Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe tried to shake things up by having DC heroes use heroic brutalities. These were stated to be non-lethal because when Shazam punches you into the sky, hits you with a lightning bolt, and then brutally stomps your body into the ground, potentially breaking all your ribs, non-lethal is the first word that comes to mind. Sure. Soul Calibur. Everything. Any game with weapons can be incredibly brutal, especially when it comes to smashing an opponent's head in with a giant axe, or stabbing them repeatedly with a sword. In Soul Calibur, these attacks result in a KO. We can somewhat agree with ring-outs into water and such not killing foes either. But ring-outs where the enemy falls into a bottomless pit? How is that not lethal? Then again, some characters aren't seen again when the story progresses, so maybe they are dead. It's hard to say. Golden Sun. Summons and Synergy. Giant meteors raining down on enemies? Entities like Charon, Iris reshaping the world, crossing the boundary between life and death to deal massive damage? In Golden Sun and the Lost Age, these abilities simply down foes. Not kill them, just down them. To be fair, there are plenty of story bosses who are weakened heavily by the battle and subsequently die. Regular enemies though, they just walk it off. Team Fortress 2, the Medic's Metagun. The medic in Team Fortress 2 is pretty high on the crazy scale, but he's probably one of the least directly threatening heroes. His medigun doesn't even hurt people, it heals them, except when he's got an uber charge ready, which can be used on numerous other characters to turn them into nigh invulnerable machines of death. Non-lethal, they said. Hippocratic Oath, they said. Overwatch. Mercy's Caduceus Staff. Mercy in Overwatch is just as guilty of this. The crux of her kit is healing and resurrecting allies. Even Valkyrie is used to chain heal multiple allies in close proximity. However, she can also damage boost them, and unlike the medic, she can do this all the time. Again, it's an indirect way of killing foes, but the fact that she gets kill credit and ult charge while saying it had to be done just makes us sick. Mercy main, by the way. Disgaea 2. Reverse damage tiles. If you haven't caught the general tone by now, healing equals life and wonderful times, even if you're indirectly contributing to the death of your enemies. That being said, Disgaea 2 had an interesting way to make healing lethal. In the Dark World, which is composed of alternate versions of the main story's stages, there are different tiles which confer different effects. If enemies happen to stand on tiles that deal reverse damage, then hurting them will heal them. The inverse also applies. Heal them and they die. You don't even need massively powerful healing spells to pull this off, which means even the faintest wisp of aid results in death. Groovy. Monster Hunter. Capturing monsters. For all intents and purposes, capturing monsters in the Monster Hunter series is supposed to be for research. At least that's what Monster Hunter World taught us, what with the knowledge that said monsters will be released back into the wild. In older games, captured monsters suffered a different fate. Due to being tranquilized, they could be killed and carved up much more easily for essential organs. Yes, that also aided in research, but if you thought the Hunters Guild was domesticating every random Rathalos that was captured, well, think again. Marvel vs. Capcom. Everything. Marvel vs. Capcom, much like other fighting games, goes completely over the top with its moves. You can fill enemies with lead, unleash claws and swords and fire upon them, and they'll just suffer a knockout. Let's be real though, some characters like Rogue and Cable never made it into Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Infinite. So were they really knocked out? That's the real question. Dynasty Warriors. Everything. Koei Tecmo's quality may have waned with the more recent Dynasty Warriors. There's no denying the company's flair for large, crowd-brawling shenanigans though. After all, isn't it fun to tear through crowds of enemies, especially when they're being, quote, KO'd? You're not actually killing various goons, but knocking them out instead. Draw your own conclusions. Deus Ex Human Revolution. Tranquilizers, fists. Being a, quote, pacifist in Deus Ex Human Revolution is pretty similar to being a, quote, hero in the Batman Arkham series. Break some limbs, electrocute and gas enemies, all in the name of not killing. But what if those enemies suffered complications down the line? What if something went wrong and they're actually dead? Which is fine and all, it's a video game for crying out loud, but let's not pretend it's a pacifist approach. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, rubber bullet headshots. Between all the terrible things you can hurt baddies with in Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, like, rocket punches, rubber bullets are easily some of the most brutal tools. Shooting someone in the head with a rubber bullet will just as easily kill them as normal bullets would in real life. Of course, in The Phantom Pain, they're just, quote, knocked out. Are they really, Snake? Are they really?
And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.